Thank you.
It's all yours.
Yeah, that's great. Let me share my screen, and then we will start. Share sound and optimize for a video clip, because I'm going to show a couple of them. I hope you're able to see my screen now. Can you see the screen? My screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, this is an interesting conversation, and it's an interesting time to have it. And I'm happy to be with you again with the NY RUG let's say alliance. I gave a lecture, I think more than 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. It was mostly on computational design. So Andre has been we have been in touch with him. And then I have been waiting AI and ML tools to pick up in the fashion that it just did within the last 6 months for a couple of years now. So formerly, AI and ML tools were always there, right? So AI is nothing new. It's more than 70 years old, 70. That's not 17, but 70 years old. And there has been a lot of developments in the field. But what happened within the 6 months is the fruits. I think the yield of the investment that people did. I would say intellectual investment, and also like conceptual investment, also like coding, and of course budget investments that have been made within the last decades are kind of coming out. So today's lecture is about me discussing what AI can bring into design processes, and what can we talk about AI in terms of arts. I wouldn't consider myself as an artist, but I work on my own artwork. It's art for me. It doesn't have to be for anybody else. But I'm thinking these thoughts and feelings are coming from the days that have already passed. So that's what I'm going to touch upon, and I'll start with that. So instead of bombarding you, okay, AI is amazing. You can make amazing images by using text to image tools and so on and so forth. Everybody knows that. And then everybody will get oversaturated pretty soon. That I already know. So let's start somewhere else. Let's get grounded and start somewhere else. So if we look at this chair on the left side, it's the famous Macintosh chair, and it's made of, it's just a render of the shape, but you can think it's as a real thing. So on the left side, you have an object, and you have the, like a shadow, and you can think about it in any way you want. Once we start kind of like analyzing the world and discretizing the world into pieces to write algorithms, to write computer programs, to write descriptions of things, we start looking into the parts like that are making up that shape, right? So for this chair, I can talk about lines, I can talk about parallel lines, I can talk about grids, I can talk about 3D objects, maybe prisms. And then regarding the materials and shadow, I can talk about like gradients and so on and so forth, right? So it's really interesting. The perceptual experience and the computational mind are very different from each other, because one is just experiential, you just see, you just live, you just experience and feel. The other one is you have to describe and compute. So this is the distinction between the two. So I call this like one side is the meaning, whereas the other side is the algorithm, right? So you have to work on. And so let me show you a pretty quick study on this one, which is about seeing and trying to make the computer see in a way. So this was a plugin that I worked on a while ago. I'll explain what this is, but just got this like Toyo Ito's interior photograph, which featured the Macintosh chair. So it's there, and then you also have a piano at the background. So what I was curious about at that time was I didn't know much about coding, and then had some skills, had good skills in modeling, I was learning coding in multiple languages. I was interested in bitmap processing a lot. So I was like, okay, what does this levels histogram in Photoshop mean? Which is which is a statistical, representation of the pixels with their gray levels, showing, like how many of them you have in a picture. And what you see on the right side of that Photoshop screenshot is a 3ds Max. I think it was 7, maybe at the time. I don't remember which version it was. But it's the 3ds Max screen, which is reading the same image and plotting a levels histogram. And by doing that, I started moving forward with that. So I was kind of like parsing an image, looking into gray levels, trying to kind of like find the clusters of dark pixels and lighter pixels and so on and so forth, which can be seen on this side. And on the right side, I was also trying to understand it in terms of like photographic composition, right? So this is kind of like fully going from a computational mind from pixels, which are like self-standing entities, to composition and let's say visual aesthetics, right? Which is kind of like a very, I would say, objective, sorry, it's a subjective actually way of understanding the world. And then, I pushed this research. So looking into, Vermeer's paintings, trying to understand if this gray level distribution of pixels, the lights in space, can give us any idea about the composition that we're looking at. I, at the time, was trying to also find the objects in the scene. So I asked a friend from electronics department, and he suggested me to use the algorithm that the satellite, which is used in the satellite imagery for like finding the shores, like the shoreline. So when you take a picture of the world from, from the space, you can tell, if you have edge detection algorithms, you can tell where the ocean ends and the land begins and so on. So I tried to implement that in 3ds Max too, in a weird way, and I succeeded to a point, in which I was able to kind of like detect these objects. But at the same time, I was also interested in seeing the gradation of the gray. So it's not only the edge, finding the edge, but trying to see how much like a surface goes from bright to light and how quick. So I was trying to see if a surface has a really smooth gradation of light or a really sharp turn of light. So that was the first algorithm. The second algorithm that I worked on, I just totally made it up, right? So I was reading an image from left to right, trying to see where the brightness is kind of like changing, and also defining, from left to right, from top to bottom, and trying to kind of like plot those changes for each and every image. So starting with Ito's, interior photograph here, and then getting some architectural renders here and trying to kind of like use those as well. So this kind of like gave me this pool of 3 algorithms that I was working on. First one, edge detection. The second one was like the composition. I was using rule of thirds. If you know it, you take the canvas, you put 2 lines horizontally, 2 lines vertically, and then if the objects align with the intersections of those lines, the composition is supposed to be like, either more striking or more in balance and so on and so forth. So you could, write any algorithm for that. I'm not for the rule of thirds, but I'm just showing that you can take any photographical rule and just apply it. And the third algorithm was, the one that I made up, and then, trying to use that. Okay, so I think we have somebody. Yeah, okay, thanks for muting.
Welcome to the Bloom booth at InterZoom 2019.
We are hearing someone, I think. Okay, it's muted. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay. All right. So so then, you take these algorithms, and then, I came up with a scoring system, right? So kind of like giving scores to those images in every category, and then trying to select images depending on those scores. Okay, so what is this? And then I also had an interface, in 3D Max to do that. So that was a quality-aware rendering system. All right, so this is my master's thesis from 2004 to 2006. Okay, so It's about computational aesthetics. It's trying to make the computer understand what sorts of images you like, and then the computer tries to render them, or as it renders, it tries to pick the images that you really want to see. I didn't know that this was machine learning right at the time, so I wasn't fully aware of the like the machine learning systems, but I was trying to come up with a kind of like statistical approach to, you know, kind of like generating these, let's say, aesthetically measured images. So 2005, just like looking back, maybe it was too early to get into machine learning. So today, okay. Before coming to today, I'm going to take you to, again, like maybe 2018, 19, during which I got super bored. And I ended up creating videos such as this one. So let me show you what this is. This might be a little choppy, but I'll let it run for a while. So what you can see here is an image on the right bottom side. And then there's a 3D object here. Let me shut down the music for a second. So, okay, you probably are seeing the correlation between the image you see on the bottom right and then the, you know, kind of like the extruded shape here. So this is an animation, let's see, I uploaded 2 years ago to YouTube. And it's been sitting there, and we had multiple conversations with multiple people on this one. So let me get back to the presentation. Okay. So what's happening here is this, and here we see the painting, 3D form, top view, side view, and so on and so forth. So what I was trying to do is I had like a bunch of images, actually 1,074 of them to be exact. And I developed this algorithm to kind of like move them, extrude them in 3D space, and maybe is a tectonic form. And then something like floor slabs to make them look like buildings. So they were like clouds, but buildings at the same time. Why did I do this? Well, I was bored, you know, that was the reason. And I was kind of like exploring some, you know, ideas to visualize actually the paintings that I did before. So which I'm going to show in a second. So these are kind of like, you know, multiple different variations of these things, which are continuous in their time space. So this is like it's an animation that is morphing between the images. And as you play it, it's not kind of like choppy. It kind of like moves in flux. I call this cloud tectonics, right? So because I was dealing with a nebulous idea, but at the same time, it had its like structural form, both algorithmically and also visually, right? So it's like very strong visual form. I know how things are connecting. I know how I can create this mesh. I know how I can create this secondary soft mesh on it. I know it has slabs, but it's still like nebulous, like flying in the air and nothing, anything for architecture, you know, or for design, right? So it's just a visual inspiration. But this was the main motivation. What you're seeing in the close-up picture is an oil painting, right? So I think like studying computation for so long, and also having a very kind of like artistic tendency towards creating these paintings, renders, and objects. I always had this like split, you know, mindset between the two. I'm like, okay, computer can do crazy things, but I want to touch it. I want to experience it. The computer cannot really help with that all the time, and so on and so forth. So when I started painting again, after defending my PhD dissertation, I said, okay, you cannot compute this, right? So this was my kind of like statement, you know, when I walked into presentation. So these are some of the paintings that I did before the pandemic. Unfortunately, in the pandemic, I kind of dropped it again because I left everything here, and then I was moving around for a long time. It was mostly because I was painting much earlier when I was a kid and maybe like teenager. I think I lost a lot of things. So this was more like a rediscovery of the medium and like painting, the process of painting again. But it was nice to kind of get dirty with the oil painting and so on and so forth. And then machine learning tools started picking up. Again, this was 3 years ago, 3+ years ago. And then I said, okay, I'm going to train my own model using these paintings. I got 825 photographs of the paintings and trained this model, which produced these images. So I just showed that, so I'll just jump back to that. Okay. So interestingly, at the time, what comes out of the, the resolution is already been increased like crazy, because now we're going to talk about Midjourney, in which you can do like 2K plus images, runway ML, 2K to 4K images, and so on. But at the time, this was like 512 pixels wide and high. So I was applying some sharpening filters and finding edges and so on and so forth. But I think what was interesting was also like seeing features like the circular feature that you're seeing on the bottom left, which I discovered then, was maybe in one of the paintings, not in all the paintings, but maybe in like 25 of the photographs out of like 800 something. So just to remind that these kind of like machine learning AI trained models are always statistical. So whatever you feed in, that comes out, right? So, I mean, and when we talk about intelligence, because AI is currently not necessarily building all the bridges that it needs to, build self-consciousness yet, as of now, we wouldn't expect it to, be fully smart, right? So we feed something, and let's say, because these 8 images are already there, it kind of like draws something like this one here. Okay, so that's great. I call this also maybe cloud gazing a little bit, right? So it's like, a designer looking at the clouds, seeing creatures, dragons, new buildings, or it's like Leonardo, throwing sponges on the wall and just looking at the trace and stains and, kind of like imagining about that. I think that's pretty powerful, and I kept pushing this. This became an endless way for me to, like find like different ways of this thing to become alive, right? So every time I played with it, the algorithm was changing, the rendering materials were changing, and then the cloud was changing, right? So it's again, why was I doing this? Like, again, if you're looking for a utilitarian purpose, maybe it's not there, and I don't think it needs to be there, because it was my engagement with this technology, trying to understand the technology. And I always envisioned my paintings like having another life and another life and another life and another life. And these are also my paintings. I kind of like want to accept them that way, because it's, again, like, it's a part of me. It's just digital, right? So anyway, this kept going for a while. If you're interested in seeing more, these are all on my all on my channel. So and then comes Midjourney. Okay, so this is a funny moment, because I worked on this and I was like, okay, hell, I'm gonna give it a try and see, what it does when I say cloud tectonics. So on the right side, what you see is what I did 3 years ago. On the left side is what I did with Midjourney again 2 weeks ago, right? So I said, okay, cloud tectonics, groundless ML, which was groundless machine learning. So I mean, this is out of like 200 images. Maybe there was one like this one. So it's, they're kind of like similar in essence. It's interesting. It's very powerful that the AI algorithm is trying to merge the idea of like tectonics and cloud is pretty crazy already, right? If you think about it. And I don't think anybody else tried cloud tectonics before, like, or it's not taught to the program. So it's not, it doesn't have the previous knowledge. So as you give the written prompt to Midjourney, this text to AI tool, text to image tool, AI tool, it generates these ones. I like them. Okay, so the thing is, I like them, but to be honest, I'm not fascinated, right? So what I'm fascinated is the one that I did before, because I've been so deep in the roots of doing it, and I know how it's made. That was crazy. Whereas this latter one, which is, this kind of like, again, text to image tools, it creates marvels, but I don't get much satisfaction out of it. I know who's getting the satisfaction. I know the developers of Midjourney. I've been joining their community calls, over Discord. I know they're fascinated with their tool, because I agree, because it's their art, right? So they put this code together, which is enabling all of us to explore these ideas. But the outcomes are fine, and because we can do thousands of them a month or a day now, it's just like noise, right? So I mean, I can what does it mean instead of painting one image or like painting 1/10 of one oil painting, I can make like 10,000 images a month. What does that mean? Like, it's just like the quantity doesn't mean quality anymore. So that's the thing. And also, I think our visual engagement is really about visual ambiguity, right? So I've been always defending, okay, computers can see like binary things, 0 and 1, and whatever you teach them. So it's like either duck or the rabbit, right? So the human perception. But I've been always kind of like, advocating for seeing the crocodile. So this is me always kind of like trying to, and I am the one actually here who's putting the crocodile there, as I was trying to explain this third thing, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, right? So it's not binary. I happened to just see that crocodile there, and I happened to make this collage at the time as I was working on my dissertation. And I use this like, I'm not getting bored of using these slides like in 8 years now, because it's telling so much about visual ambiguity. Same thing goes for, like shape grammars. Let me touch upon that, because shape grammars, I think, is still challenging the idea of computation, just saying that, okay, if you don't instruct the computers to do something, it cannot really do it. Well, how is AI doing it? Well, AI is still based upon the same principles, right? So that's why, again, it's reading, okay, these images are super interesting, but essentially they are statistical patterns again, nothing else, right? So it's hard to tell people, it's hard to explain people who don't have computational backgrounds that this is just a rendering of, it's an average of other things that the computer learned, not necessarily really learned, but kind of like, extracted from a pattern as a percentage, as a statistical model. So that's just that for me. So if I like the image, I like it, but I never get like, oh, I'm mad about it. So, okay, is this 2 squares or 4 triangles, right? So you can see 2 squares embedded into each other, or you can see 4 triangles. Depending on how you kind of discretize that world. You remember at the beginning of my presentation, I talked about, subdividing the world into pieces for computational analysis. And this is just doing that, right? So 2 squares here and 4 triangles here, and then you'll see the hierarchical structuring is totally different. The nice thing about shape grammars is you can do both, and you can go with any one that you like. So this is a painting/drawing which was generated that way, starting with just like a plus kind of sign, and then using a computer system but hand drawing. So the setup was consisting of just a drawing surface. So you draw with markers, there's a camera capturing what you draw, and whatever you draw and being captured can be seen on the computer screen. So on the computer screen you can make patterns with the computer. So this was hand drawn and captured, step 1. Step 2 is whatever you have captured, you made a pattern on the computer. The third step, again on the computer. The fourth step, this time you draw something on it, right? So it's like, it's a mix of using computational like pattern making, and then hand drawing, tracing, and so on. But what's interesting here is that, again, like this, being able to find this, the red area, or tracing the red area exactly like this. So this is an intentional motivation from the human agent, right? So it's not the machine trying to find what is this shape. It's not a square. It's like it's blah 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 something. We don't know what it is, but what the human is doing is the human wants to draw that blah 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 there, so that you want to see it and you want to draw it. So that is what is essential about, like, the perception and drawing, and then you can use the computational technologies to kind of like support that. So that's really important. So we talked about ambiguity. Let me jump to something really fun here. So I'm going to jump to ChatGPT, which is developed by OpenAI. So this is, you can chat to this thing and you can ask it the right thing. So in the office we have been making fun of using this for writing reviews, like performance reviews. So because you can say, write a 5-paragraph performance review of, because you're an architect, most of you are, I'm going to say, because a review of the architect let's say Sam Maker, right? Name and surname, who contributed to realization of our Tokyo skyscraper. I'm just making it up. Also let's say Denver train station. He can grow, he can develop his communication skills. Okay, I'm not going to give more than that. So I hit enter. All right. It's thinking. Come on. I'm going to guess the server is super busy. Okay, so this is, yeah, it's not done yet. It's still thinking. Okay, so finally. This is amazing. It doesn't.
It's the time of the year where everybody needs to
Yeah,
write
everybody's
their performance
exactly.
review.
So I did this during the lunchtime. So everybody is writing performance reviews. Okay, there you go. So this is like, if you want to write your personal performance review or for somebody else, Sam Maker is a talented architect who played a key role in the realization of our Tokyo skyscraper and the Denver train station projects. He's a creator. However, there is room for improvement in some communication skills. Overall, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like concluding that, right? So that's great. Okay, so wonderful, it works. Some people are kind of like getting scared with this, but I find it amusing. The other thing you can do is you can ask this thing to write code. So you can say, write a Python code that desaturates images and then rescales them and then saves them by renaming. Okay. So you send this. Okay. So here you go. This code, so it's writing a code, a Python code, which also actually works, right? So it's desaturating, resizing, and saving. All right. So people have been talking about job loss a little bit. So if I have to guess, I think the people who are writing like really non-sophisticated code like this, and maybe they were able to get like some tech jobs 5-10 years ago, just out of the college, that's not happening again. Okay. So that's the first thing I think that's going to disappear. But let's go a little further. So one thing I tried was, okay, let me see if it is, it's not there. So I also made this, write something about John Lennon too, about the song. But you can also go, let's say, write an essay, on darkness, let's say, and hope. Include, learnings from history, belief systems. I can go specific here, but I'm not going to, and so on and so forth. So you say something and maybe positive outlook. Okay, so I'm going to say something like that and just saying, okay. Okay, so it's, it starts with darkness being like, this and that, and then metaphor for difficulty and uncertainty, but despite darkness, there's always hope, blah, 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 whatever you see in a Hollywood movie, right? So that's fine. If you go specific with some writers and thinkers, or like a certain type of belief system, it's going to be more precise. So it's, it's perfect, right? So it's writing. But if you test this, you're going to realize that the best thing it does is scripting. The second thing it does is formal writing, like reviews. But if you ask it to write some articles, it gets blunt. So if I were to write about like hope and darkness, I would write much better than it does. That's what I'm thinking as of now. So ambiguity, that's why I started with ambiguity. Ambiguity is a very strong weapon for humans. And for all these years, engineers have been trying to use technology to kill ambiguity, right? So people were thinking we needed AI for killing ambiguity. We want to know what time we're going to be at work. We want to know the exact route. We want to know how much I should weigh to be healthy. We want to know this. I need to know how many glasses of water I need to. It's not like that. It's not. The ambiguity is being human, right? And then Midjourney arrived, and then Dolly arrived, and it exploded. When I started using Midjourney, there were like 150,000 people. There are now 5 million subscribers within like 6 to 8 months. This is the change. So, and I kept saying that, okay, interestingly, we tried to kill ambiguity for so long by using engineering systems and AI and ML, but the tools that picked up and made AI famous and crazy are the tools that are creating ambiguity, because they are just making images. That's so crazy. Just keep that in mind. So I said, okay, write the 3-paragraph article on John Lennon's Instant Karma too. So I was kind of like talking about the song and blah, blah, blah. You can check this out later. Okay, great. So I think this was a part of our conversation. I'm not going to show you too many images from Midjourney, but I'm just putting these for Andre because again, I'm really touching upon. I'm really trying to see through. I'm like an X-ray into the system because I want to hack it. I want to use it. I want to make it do valuable things beyond creating 1 million images per year, right? So I don't think that might be interesting, but it's as interesting as this slide, right? So this is beautiful slide, 8 of them, wonderful. I have hundreds of these. I can have thousands, 10,000 and so on. Okay, the question is, what do you do with them is the bigger question. Oh, and today actually with a new version of the Midjourney algorithm, I tried, like John Lennon singing in Central Park Polaroid. So these are the kind of like outcomes, right? So you can also see the technology is moving forward really, really rapidly, and you have to remain on top of things if you want to understand what's really happening with all of these. This slide, excuse me, is kind of older, maybe older is now like 4 months ago, right? So, and it was comparing, DALL-E 2, which was trying to be realistic all the time, trying to render these realistic photographic images. And then Midjourney always kind of like creating these artistic, results and so on. And it's still the same way, I would say. And Midjourney, though, with the version 4 algorithm, which was released maybe a month ago, it has become so powerful. Like it's going beyond. Like the artistic, I think the styles are pretty crazy. The yield is pretty strong, and then if you want to go like photographic or like realistic renders, it's I don't know, like it's beyond. Okay, so how do we deal with this? So I presented, I've been presenting this to internally, and externally, and people get overwhelmed, right? So especially people with like different backgrounds and everybody asking about, again, like the job replacement, what's going to happen, how are we going to use it, and so on and so forth. So how question is really important for me. Well, so what is the question is the way important one, but we're going to get that at the end. First, let's look into the how question, and I'm getting towards the end, so it's not going to be too long. Okay, first, you may or may not like this, but it's happening. Okay, so to me, like these kind of technologies, like parametric design. Let me talk about it a little bit. So I was one of the, I think, early ones to use and utilize it in New York, as I was working at KPF starting in 2006. I started using generative components in 2004. So somewhat early comer in the parametric design space, and we were like 8 people in New York at the time, and then everybody was going crazy, and then Grasshopper came out. This was pre-Grasshopper. Grasshopper came out within the next 3 to 4 years. And everybody was like, oh my God, everything is going to become parametric. Oh, this is like super intelligent. Da, 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 da. So I was like, no, well, okay, it's not intelligence. If you are not embedding any intelligence into it, it's not intelligence. not everything is not going to become, parametric. So that was my stance. And I'm happy that it turned out to be that way. But something happened in between. Like there were 10 years, there was a decade during which people tried to leverage parametric design. It's like, oh, we have to do it too. You have to look cool too. We have to make these interesting patterns too, and so on. So they did that. There was like lots of noise, like really, I mean, ridiculous papers. I'm just gonna say it, like some images that are not interesting. It was full of it. But then it took a long time to get over that because pretty much people had to build skills, try, fail, and move forward, or do something meaningful and then prove that it's meaningful. So what's happening now is the change is so rapid, like it's changing so fast, it's moving forward so fast. If you are to fail, you already failed. You're gone already, or you're gonna fail so fast, and you have to get over it. You have to either find a way to do something meaningful, or just kind of like drop it, right? So that I like about these technologies, like AI technology picking up so fast now. So my suggestion is, you don't have to have any feeling towards it, like it, hate it, doesn't matter. You just be aware of it, right? So we have to look into the tool. So I was talking about the different versions of Midjourney. So this is from like you can read the prompts that I was putting here, and I'm gonna talk about prompts in a second. Botanical drawings of robotic species in Art Nouveau style. So this is the, from version 2. Tokyo in Dubai, this was like very, very short prompt, very successful result in my mind. Version 3 algorithm. This is version 4, like making some shoes, just playing with it, on the side as an example. Okay, and the results are, version 4 is crazy about just kind of like realizing that, render style and making things look like realistic. This chart I prepared in June, the first time, I think like early times when I used Midjourney, just decide, just kind of like explaining how the workflow is. So there's the black box here, which is the natural language processing, dealing with semantics, ambiguity in language, and so on. And it's dealing with the patterns that it was thought before, and then putting out like 4 images from which you can make variations, upscale them, and so on. But this changed over time. If you're using Midjourney, they put remix feature, they put this feature, that feature, the features change. But to me, this kind of like this kind of look into the anatomy of the principles of the tool kind of like makes you aware of, okay, if I'm trying to achieve something, I have to go this way or that way. This is a cool slide that I pulled. You can see the references at the bottom. It's showing the data sets that are used for these sort of images, right? So Midjourney used 2 billion images, Stable Diffusion 2 billion again, DALL-E 2 650 million, and so on and so forth. So to me, again, like I think Midjourney is the I don't want to say best, but it's giving the best results that I'm anticipating, that I want to get. But at the same time, it shows like how important the developers takes are. So they are, I know Midjourney developers, because I've been listening to the community calls. They want to keep it artistic. They want to keep it generous. They want to keep it like not fully controlled in terms of composition. They don't want you to do in painting and so they have their, they made their calls and choices, which is creating this really like simple and clear product. And the next model to use this kind of database is supposed to use 5 billion images, right? But that's being said, those numbers are huge, but still, if you look into Stable Diffusion's top 10 data sets, it's still biased, right? So it's using images from like these resources, but not from the other ones. So that is to say that whatever you do with AI will always have biases. And I think we are going to keep fighting those biases for the decades to come. Hopefully the AI never develops a bias against humans, right? So as we see in the movies, and it's actually plausible, like it's possible. The other thing about these tools is like you can use actually Midjourney as if it's a parametric model because it has some parameters built-in parameters. So here I was using exactly the same prompt and exactly the same seed, random seed. So keeping those as constants and changing other parameters such as stylization and abstraction and quality and the weights. Like if you have two things, you can say, hey, this is heavier than the other one, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, like I was able to get like 4 different, let's say, images from the same exactly the same prompt. And I was suggesting that, okay, if you are, let's say, a visual designer who is working for a movie company, you could use the first image for Minority Report. The second image is, is similar to the collaboration between Andy Warhol and BMW from 1982, or this one, reminiscent of like Blade Runner 2049, or this is like Baby Driver and so on. So this is me actually kind of like projecting my ideas onto this thing. Okay, so prompt crafting. When the text to image tools started picking up, so they were like really heated debates on LinkedIn saying, okay, like, oh, I prompted this, and I am the master of prompts, so I can kind of like render the image exactly the way I want when I prompt it this way. So I'm like, these are like black belt prompt crafters. I find it amusing because because the funny thing is, again, the AI tool is trained on 2 billion images, and well, it's a limited data set. Although there are 2 billion images, it's a limited data set, and the language always has ambiguities. Like even two people are talking, they never understand each other like 100%. And then there's also the bias in the algorithm, which is favoring some outputs compared to the other ones. Okay, so just saying that, okay, I can't craft anything by just writing the perfect prompt that's awesome, but I found this as the best answer for those kind of people. And I say, tell me the truth, I'm ready to hear it. Prompt engineer is not a real job. Okay, so the nice thing is, I think we will have more of these people, and it's going to be amusing again. But like it's a trend, right? So everything like parametric design, whatever you can think of, like generative design, BIM, and now AI. These are trends. They come and go. They kind of like settle down after a while. When the trend is going, it's good to get excited, but you need to keep your critical stance. It's not that easy to become a master of a thing within like 5 to 10 days or even 5 years, I would say, right? So take it easy, learn about the tool, like understand how it works, and then I think you can make something maybe meaningful using them. So there are really nice tools emerging. Runway is one of them. So this is maybe merging AI, artificial intelligence, with Photoshop and After Effects all together in a browser. So you don't have any kind of like, you don't need to use any local resources. You don't need to have any computational power on your laptop or desktop. You just kind of go to runway.com, and it has all these models like collected in one single space. And beyond that, it's also enabling you to giving you, let's say, these movie tools that you can collaborate with multiple people simultaneously. So this has been, I've been using Runway for over 3 years now. And firstly, I was using it to, they didn't have these magic tools or the video tools before. They just had the ML, style GAN training stuff. And I was like already fascinated and liked that. But now the state it is at is like rather surprising for like collaboration and instantly kind of like getting, some visual stories about your design is very, very strong. So what is coming up now is 3D from one single image. So if you haven't seen this is Icon. It's called ICON, which is Icon, and it's a research paper that is trying to generate, 3D models by using like one single image. Check it out; it's pretty crazy. And because let's say this model, it's already trained on human form, so it can guess what the backside of the body looks like, and so on and so forth. And the next thing is, So the other thing is, I think one of the interesting things I've been advocating for all the time, and which I keep doing, and I think this lecture is a part of that too. So this lecture, the workshop that I did 3 weeks ago Penn State, in State College, or I end up like teaching, you know, like as an adjunct at times. Teaching is really important too. So I think like just implementing, trying to implement these technologies, even though you are not mastering it yet, is a good thing, because the students can, you know, figure out it for you maybe. So I was at Penn State College 3 weeks ago, and I tried to help, you know, a colleague, Şebnem Yılnay, and her studio. And these are first year students. So this was, you know, they're pretty much second assignment, first semester, second assignment, and they are trying to, you know, build some like volumetric relationships, right? So I was stunned with the results. I didn't expect, you know, these students to, so I only did like a 5-hour workshop, first talking about AI a little bit, then spending some time with runway and stable diffusion. So what you're seeing on the right side is an image that is generated by AI, and what you see on the left side is the models that are made by the students. And same thing goes for this kind of design 1, design 2, different designs, cluster plan, and so on and so forth. So the images are really small, but what I was fascinated by was, okay, these are students who has no spatial design experience, right? Like nothing. I mean, they see architecture, but they haven't designed it yet, right? They don't know about relations. They don't know about, you know, clustering. They don't know, but because we produce like so many images in one session, and I was talking about like lines, volumes, adjacencies, you know, aggregation, you know, those kind of like design concepts, then, you know, like these are the photographs, you know, they sent me because I was back in Boston already. And I was stunned with it, just seeing this kind of quality, or this kind of like intellectual depth coming from the first semester students, freshmen in the architectural school, was I was blown away. And you know, I'm not attesting this to, I'm like, oh, like AI did. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying and also, you know, Penn State is somewhat not the most, you know, like techie school to go, right? So we were aware of that too. And of course, like, you know, this was the only studio. We opened it to everyone, but it was a small group of students. But we had a leap there, right? So in terms of, and not in terms of maybe making these models, but in terms of having the conversation of the concept that we were trying to teach in the studio, that, you know, Şebnem Yılnay, the professor, was trying to teach in the studio. So that was groundbreaking. Okay. So this can go forever, so I'm not going to go forever. Maybe we can make it more conversational. Let me finish this one with this one. Again, here are the 3 slides that I've been using for, again, like 8 years now. Still not bored of them, and interestingly, it applies to everything. So again, as I suggested, I think it's good to use these technologies just to have an understanding of them. And Forbes has been publishing this article since 2017, if I'm not wrong, or 16 or 17. Every year they publish skills you need, 10 of them, and it's always like this, right? So I haven't seen, maybe I missed the last years, I don't know, but I've never seen anything about, oh, you know, I have to know this kind of engineering, computer science, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, none of those. It always says critical thinking, complex problem solving, creativity, emotional intelligence, negotiation, service and orientation. You know, I can add like, you know, supportive management, being like servant, you know, being servant manager, and so on and so forth. So people management, I would just replace with that. This is to say, I think this is to say that like technology and the tools are going to keep getting crazier. But again, we have to kind of like step back and, you know, like just have a wider perspective and ask like, why do we have these things? And the answer is embedded in the history. And I think in many moments in time, I just keep pulling this one from 1514, when Albert Dürer made, you know, Melancholia eye in the engraving. So this is interesting because it coincides with the time. He's also quoted to say, "What is beautiful, I do not know." You know, Albert Dürer said that around the time he did this engraving. And this is totally my reading of it. Like, if you look at the engraving, you would see like lots of tools of computation from that time, you know, like the magic numbers, magic square, you have the hourglass, you know, the time, you have the scale, the weight, you have the ladder to climb, there's a truncated solid, you know, which is this Archimedean Platonic solid, but it's kind of like truncated, so it's like perfection reshaped. There's the hammer, there's the plier, there's the compass, there's you know, there's the saw, which you cannot see because it's cropped now. But these are all tools of computation and measurement. And he's saying like, what is beautiful? I do not know. I think it's a, and the, you know, it's said that in the history books, art history books, that figure that's sitting there is a female. It could be she or he, is the doppelganger of Albert Dürer, which is an angel and just sitting indifferent to everything, right? So it's like not really using, not really putting any of those tools into use. So that's my reading, right? So rather put everything into use in a very, very critical way with a critical mind and with the motivation of creating value and meaning. So then, you know, we have lots of computation power today, you know, Intel Inside. And I used the last bits of my Photoshop skills to create this human insight, you know, again, as I was doing my PhD. So we have to kind of like get back to that human insight and use the computation and AI technologies in that manner. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to hear your comments or answer if you have any questions.
I'm still trying to digest this. So yeah, folks, what are our questions? I mean, I have to admit, I had to Google Warhol's BMW. I thought it was Liechtenstein who did the BMW. Turns out both of them did.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, wasn't it the other guy? No, it was both of them.
Yeah, there are a lot of them actually. Yeah, BMW, they've been collaborating with lots of artists over the years to get the cars painted. Yep.
So yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start asking questions. Folks, what do you got?
I can ask one question. Did anyone use any of these tools like Midjourney or Dolly? No one? Somebody did. Rami.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, actually, I was talking to someone who's working in the space, and we were talking about how do you come up with signature? Because at the end, you know, we're generating all these images, and the whole thing about, you know, the art in this is the human perspective that to some extent can be unique. And so if we're relying on these technologies to like generate all these images, but we want to actually proactively use it as a tool to communicate maybe an artistic intention, how are we using it to the point where, you know, do we care how far the output goes, right? To the point that do we care for the signature of the image that's created? And I find that to be a very important topic in the sense that do we want to, like, you know, publish these images on the web too often, and like the signature of the image in terms of its artistic style and so on aren't like well defined for the human's ability to iterate on these designs for what they may create instead. And so kind of creating some boundaries around, you know, how does the human creativity maybe use it as a support system rather than it being a, you know, an actual tool to use for the final output. But, you know, because otherwise, if machines do everything for us, what do we humans want to do? So we can easily become lazy. So I would think that there would fundamentally need to be a systematic approach to how we rely on these outputs.
Yeah, I would take this as a discussion that's going to heat up in the near future, maybe more. But because, like, when you say final image, so the images that you're getting, although they're kind of like fascinating concept-wise, I think they're as good as an Instagram post, right? So if your final product is, if you need an image for today to post on Instagram, Midjourney is your friend. So because you can generate it in 30 seconds and then craft it or refine it in 5 to 10 minutes and you have it, right? So then you're done. But beyond that, those images are, I mean, we have many now. Like okay, I'll confess, I made 12,000 images in 6 months. Okay, which is great because it helps you to, I mean, it's fine. It just helps you to understand that there's not much in it until you find, how to use these tools in the best way possible. So anyway, I'll stop there. There are other questions. I know this is also there, kind of like some IP questions as well. With that, as you were saying, like, what is it art? Like, who is the artist? And then Charlie just kind of like sent those. Maybe I will leave. I have my own view on the subject, but I'll leave I'll let somebody else respond first. Yes.
The only one final thought, at least in relation to its application to architecture, so I'll just briefly explain. I have no architectural background in any way, but I just noticed that there are some interesting software opportunities and, what could aid pre-construction design workflows. And I find that, the generative design, for example, for something like what TestFit is doing, right, where you're generating in very, very high speed all these outputs for what potential layouts may exist on a specific space. How further can we use these to actually speed up the whole pre-construction workflow process to something that can be like literally used towards construction drawings and things of that nature? And so I find that very intriguing to know, how do we create this interoperability to know that these workflows can be very seamless between each other and they're not in their own silos. So I find that an intriguing aspect for like where the generative outputs come into play.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think you're 100% on point, and I would say maybe we will have like classifications in near future as we have for CAD, for instance, some CAD tools. We have, let's say, free-form design tools. We have volumetric or solid design tools, and then you have drafting tools, and then you have rendering tools, right? So sometimes these are embedded in each other. Plus animation tools, plus simulation tools, right? So AI tools, I think, well, we're gonna get these classifications of, as you were saying, we have some stuff called like tech packs, like, so which is showing exactly, it's think them as the plan and section of shoes, right? So that's needed for manufacturing. And that's like, if you're working in 3D, that's a boring task. You don't have to do it. They are done for like manufacturing purposes. And then in architecture, again, drawings are done for like construction purposes too, right? So like just having these two backgrounds, I think I can kind of like compare and see. And then I'm thinking like some of the tools, or there are some tools now which go from like 2D to 3D, like sketch to 3D representation, or you can build things from like 2D sections and plans to 3D and so on and so forth. So maybe it's going to be more like functional tools versus inspirational tools. And what I was trying to say today about like engineering trying to kind of like cut the corners and maybe define the problem in an easier way, but the real explosion just had to happen. Like everybody wanted to be an artist. So that's the funny thing. That's why Midjourney, Dolly, that's why it exploded, right? So everybody, that's why Instagram exploded. Everybody's so visual, like humans are visual. We wanted to see images, we want to look, we want to scroll. So that was Instagram. Midjourney came, and that's the same reason why Google Images picked up to begin with, right? Going back, Pinterest, the same thing. So Midjourney is Google search, which doesn't look for images, it makes the image for you, the one that you're looking for, right? So, and I think it's striking to, as much as I'm trying to remain critical, I am also happy that the breakthrough or the fame, the wider spread is coming out of this kind of like visual engagement and excitement. Same for Andre, right? So Andre poked me saying that, hey, I see AI is like doing really intelligent stuff. Would you, no, he was like, man, those images are amazing, right? So he kind of like came back to me, and he was right. I like them. Like I don't present them that way, but I like them. I have the same thing, right? So it's just my stance. And same thing at New Balance here, right? Like I show some stuff and people are kind of like digging into it, and there's like there's an amazing hype, and I know in other brands too, but everybody at the same time is asking, okay, how is this going to kind of like reflect back to the product, to making? So that's the critical turn, right? So that's like, and that's my pick. Like I can't go crazy with image making, but my take is, okay, I will be one of the ones who tells like how this can be used in a smart way to create valuable end results, right? Because then otherwise, like, I mean, I could be an artist in my own chamber right here and then have fun. That I'm already doing, right? So anyway, so we are going to move from, I think, from the excitement to the creative potential will always be there. But again, I think there will be a lot of like utilitarian tools that are emerging out of this.
Sure. Yep. No, it is. If anything, it's a great time to be alive in that sense, right?
Yeah.
There are many,
No,
many.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. Charlie, if you and disappear, sorry, yes.
Charlie, you've got to have something to say. We know you.
Of course, I wouldn't miss this for the world. Are you kidding me? But there's a few topics. You know, I mean, awesome work. You know, always the research effort and all that stuff is really kind of inspiring. But it kind of opens up topics, and I don't even know if they're questions, right? They're topics. I remember watching a documentary on Netflix about one of the UX designers on Instagram. I think it was the UX designer on Instagram. And he was the individual that developed the infinite scroll. So, you know, how on Instagram, Facebook, you know, and some other websites, you can just kind of scroll LinkedIn infinitely. And one of his comments was that he regretted doing that because what he saw was that people were scrolling more and they were appreciating the value less of the content, right? So it comes down to kind of asking the question of quantity versus quality in a way. And the quantity side of things, I asked the other question of, you know, the driverless car, right? They're training it on like millions and millions and millions of scenarios, right? Millions and millions of hours of training. You know, shooting from the hip, how many hours do we think it takes a teenager to learn how to drive, right? And you could say, you know, a week, you know, a month, whatever, right? Like, you know, to be determined. But whatever that number is, it's significantly less than the millions and millions of hours that's being pumped into trying to teach a car to drive, right? And I guess where maybe going with this is that, like, there's so much, but where do we find the value in? And when I say we, it's like an open question, right? The design community, society, architects, that sort of thing. Where do we find the value in the quantity of things, as opposed to, you know, having the subset of it that we can truly go deep into, right? It's more of a comment than a question.
No, it's a good one. I think the head-on thing for me is the infinite scroll is the highlight in this comment for me, at least, or I can kind of like relate it back to what I was saying with generating thousands of images per month, right? That the ability of having that, because you realize that, you know, you also have a rating system in Midjourney, you know, you like the image or not. You know, you have like not good, meh, goodish, really good, kind of like, you know, 4-tier, and then they use that to kind of like enhance the algorithm and so on and so forth. But after a while, you realize, because you just click images and you pick, and then you realize that you are not even looking at the images anymore, right? So it's becoming so fast. It's already so fast, and it's gonna get faster. And I already caught myself missing images in between. I missed the images that I generated and they looked good. I agree it's too much. I think I totally understand the infinite scroll in my mind is very similar to this situation, right? So like luckily I dropped that, so I was infinitely scrolling for a while in my life, but I'm like, I don't want to do this. So I think my take maybe you could appreciate what I'm trying to say here for that reason. Because I'm not also like infinitely scrolling in Midjourney, right? So I stopped that. I'm kind of like giving the red flag already before people start. So I'm like, okay, you're going to get into this, you're going to get excited, you're going to generate that. Okay, what are we going to do with this? I don't have the right or clear answer though, because if somebody is enjoying this, I don't think there's any problem with it, right? So like you can generate fascinating images, like 10,000 images per month, and then just live with that and a little bit of food. I think that's healthy, right? So it's like a crazy painter who doesn't know how to paint and it just uses prompts. That's fine. But again, I think because of the role I have or we have, right? So Charlie and I, for the people who are not aware, like we worked together in the past, so we are colleagues and friends for a long time. It's going to be 2 decades at some point, right? So approaching almost 15 years plus. So I think our role is making us always kind of like stay in the critical bunch, and then we feel, I think we need to implement something. We have to find the answers for like the design processes, right? And we know this is going to be a part of it. Yeah, so this time I'm like, it's okay to keeping the answer for that is open for now. It's an open question. The answer is not there yet. The technology is not there yet. Yeah, just my take is take the critical stance, as you said. Yeah, like scroll, but yeah, like don't get lost in it. So that's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
One
I
thing that.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, Bo. One thing that stuck with me out of all of this was like a half a sentence where you said, all of this is just looking at averages, right? In the translation between your the old tectonic and the new tectonic thing, tectonic cloud or whatever. I think you said statistical averages or something of that kind. Because all of this is learning, and it's learning from the past. And this is where, like, one, what is good art anyway, right? In the realm of art, how do you define good? How do you define creative? I mean, you pulled out Duro, who's almost a perfect example, who was overcoming or was way ahead of his time. It took others, hundreds of years to reach his level of quality. Then you have, we were just in Paris in the spring, so we're looking at the Rodin Museum. I've found the sketches and the working models way more fascinating than the final product. And what did he do? He broke with tradition, right? He learned everything about it and then broke with it. The same thing for the Impressionist, right? Van Gogh, yay, Van Gogh. At the time, every good artist was painting and learning how to paint, so you could not see the brush stroke. What does Van Gogh do? He's like, here is my brush stroke. Yeah. Look at it. It's not even a brush stroke. I'm just plopping blotches of paint on here, and it becomes genius. Like that break, I just used another one of those words, right? What on earth is a genius? Genius, creativity, good, right? You scroll through a million. Did you skip the one that is, the best thing since Michelangelo? Because you just scroll over it too fast. So how do you feel about that future breaking creativity. Because like no matter how good a prompter you are, it's still the algorithm can only look backwards, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good one. So I think like breaking with tradition definitely opens new doors, but it doesn't necessarily mean success or quality in my mind, right? So probably,
obviously,
probably there were a
I've
lot.
broken with tradition. I'm not a genius.
Yeah, exactly. Like like
nobody bought that.
No. Like not exactly that, but the comment. It's not about you, but probably there were like hundreds of other people who broke with the tradition and made nothing, right? So
made nothing.
Made nothing pretty much. But I think like for the ones who want to push, or I mean, if you're breaking with tradition, you already don't belong to it, right? So it's kind of like looking for an outlet, looking for a new venue path. And then if this is enabling, if this is the new route on you, that the opening, the light and the end of the tunnel, just take it. I mean, that's like, and some people do this in a like to leverage their work. It never resonates with me because I can't see the fakeness in that. It's like, oh, AI is the hot thing, data visualization is the hot thing, so let's make some animations and project them on the buildings. And I know a couple of like world famous people who got there just by this. I mean, I don't find too much meaning in it, to be honest. It's not interesting to me because I understand how it works, I understand how it's made, and I know 100 other people who could do this exactly the same thing, right? So from that perspective, I think there is like breaking from tradition is one ingredient, but definitely there needs to be this kind of like artistic, something special, artistic expression, drive, style, uniqueness. Like it's the storytelling. It's telling a visual story in an unprecedented way or in a very valuable way. And I don't think there's a way to describe this. This is the weird thing, right? So that's like, you see it and it hits you, right? So, and it doesn't hit everyone, right? So that's like, and I mean, if we can create moments like this, which I don't think there are like clear recipes for. So there are not like, I can't tell you the ingredients, I can't tell you the exact recipe. But like being able to use these tools in such a way, I think requires like some critical view, a strong intention, and like lots of dedication. So those three things I know, right? So like people do that and get somewhere. And then there are sometimes like excellence, right? So like the paint bucket falls and creates an amazing painting that sells for like $1 billion. So I mean, I don't have an answer for that, to be honest, but yeah, it's a choice. Sometimes I feel like people were like, recently I present again, people were so overwhelmed with everything I showed, and actually I'm, I think, one of the most like conventional friendly presenter, right? So I'm like telling people to not I could present this as, okay, you are gone, like you are history. Like, I don't need you to write, I don't need you to paint, I don't need you to design. Like, I can present it that way. But it's not that. Like, but still, like, people get like super uncomfortable with this. And then, but the thing is, what I'm saying is, it already happened. It's not future. It is the past already. So the question is, we are collectively in this thing, and what are we going to do about it? Like, I think the bigger collective effort or the collective approach. So if we all kind of like get lost in the hype, we're going to get lost. How many people are we now? Like only 12 people left. So if you say, okay, 10 of us remain critical and try to implement these technologies in our workflow in a critical way, with an artistic mind, with a human mind, with a human conscious mind, so we create value. I think that's the very simple and the biggest kind of like takeaway from this thing that I'm showing now, without going technical. So
Bob, you're up.
I do, thanks. So Onur, thanks for the talk. It's inspiring as always. As you and Charlie were talking, about being able to generate 12,000 images, but what are you going to do with them? I'm thinking about what these tools can, where they can bring, where they can elevate design, right? So what I'm coming to, I'm not sure why, but where I'm coming to is, how do you foresee the future in terms of being able to engage with the results, right? So most of the present, and I'm not really fluent in the tools themselves, so I'll put the disclaimer on. But it seems that most of what I see these days is about, you craft a prompt, you have to pack everything that you can into that prompt, and there's not a whole lot of room for tweaking after you get the result. You start and you craft another prompt and you work at it. I think one of the things that I do as a designer is I put down my first bad idea and then I refine it over and over and over again. So, you know, like the level of engagement that I have with that idea is very interactive, and I don't start from scratch. I mean, I throw plenty of paper away, but I end up, you know, manipulating and modifying something as it goes, right? So I'm not seeing that, at least from what I've seen secondhand in the tools themselves. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on, you know, perhaps more ways to engage with the results, so you're not in that infinite scroll. So you don't just generate 10,000 and afterwards you're just like, okay, you know, I'm sick of generating these things. What does it mean for me to be able to value the results? Part of me thinks is perhaps increased engagement with the results, being able to manipulate them or dive deeper into them. And anyway, just interested in your thoughts, if there are things that you see that currently enable that, or something on the horizon.
Yeah. Both. Great question, Bob. Thank you so much. And you know, because I had to keep this presentation a little limited and to the point, I haven't shown like all the tools that are available now. And besides that, I have some projection about what's going to happen. But let me start with a wider perspective. You know, starting again since the times I've been in architectural practice, we know some companies, some software vendors try to dominate the field, right? So they were like, okay, everybody's going to use this tool from concept to construction, right? So which never happened. And then, you know, some other tool came, oh, everybody's going to render with this, and it's not gonna, it hasn't happened, and so on. So, and I made a recent post, like I think like maybe 10 days ago, saying, okay, the poison you are looking for is not in that tool, not in that tool, not in that tool, but it's in the mix, okay? So this is what designers do. It's like lots of computation, lots of human interpretation and intention, and then bunch of, you know, like tools we use. And tools are from anything pen, touch screen to algorithms, right? So those are all tools. And I think that's gonna go there. To be honest, like I'm thinking that's the next step for the AI tools. There are already tools which are enabling you to runway, which I showed. So the magic tools I was talking about, text to image, image to image. So there's something called text to image is just the prompt to image. Image to image is you start with an image and write a prompt, and it kind of builds upon the image you have. And then there's in painting, which enables or replace kind of like features, which enables you to crop or delete or, you know, like portions of an image and kind of like reiterate those portions, which is visually becoming very kind of like, you know, I think engaging. One example I can give is like, you know, the shoes are usually instructor told us to be made of like two simple parts, like the midsole and the upper, right? So one thing you can do with these tools is once you create a concept like this, I posted like bunch, you know, on the Instagram again, I can mask or like paint, let's say the midsole, keep the upper, and then it would kind of like reiterate the midsole according to that. So those tools are already there. Combine that in your mind with like text to 3D tools that I was mentioning, also the image to 3D tools. I think what's going to happen is, so this magical feeling will disappear very soon. Like, oh, it's creating, this is very, again, reminiscent of parametric design was thought to create magic. It was just kind of like putting ribs next to each other while scaling them, right? So nothing was too crazy. So this feeling of magic will disappear, and it's going to become like really controlled, like doing, you know, generating these, and then we will still have like a lot of work to fix those meshes, get the proportions right, get the spaces right, pick the right materials, do the right simulations, and so on and so forth. So, I am optimistic. I was pessimistic. Maybe it's an age thing. Right? So if you take me back, like 20 years ago to like computational design and parametric design, I was a little more pessimistic, I think. Maybe this is so fast and I'm older. Like I'm optimistic that this is going to be interesting. People are going to make mistakes, but the right tools will emerge. That's my take, because probably we will also have like lots of input. People are listening. That's the good thing. So thanks for the question.
Cool. Thanks so much.
One last question from me, because while we were setting this up over the last couple of days, actually, LinkedIn wrote me a thing, headline, "Will AI replace human art?" And then there's a whole thing, and then they get you to an article that goes to, like, Adobe just started accepting AI generated imagery, which was the big thing, right? I think you had also a post about that.
I think Getty was kind of like Getty Images, or some stock imaging companies were banning AI generated images. Yes. Yeah,
Adobe just flipped. I think Getty was on board first, and Adobe said no, and Adobe just flipped. So what's just elevator pitch? What's your take on?
Okay, this is my take, sir.
Authorship, etc.
Imagine the first time that the first pinhole camera that somebody discovered and put the pinhole, and then reflected the nature upside down and did the painting. That's the first like fake photograph of the nature. And then we had cameras, the film, and then everybody resisted. Like, okay, photography was not an art after painting for how many years? I don't know, in history. Like photography, when it came out, first it was fake. It wasn't art, right? Because painting was art. And then photography became art, and then digital photography was not art, and then films disappeared. And so, I mean, in my mind, this is just I think it's art, whatever. Like, we can keep discussing. In my mind, for something to be called art, or to have a value, either somebody calls it art or somebody pays for it. You would remember maybe 5 years, 6 years ago, an AI generated painting was sold for $295,000 or something like that. The article is there. You can Google that. So the point is, okay, is somebody paying for that? Yes. Okay, it's an artwork that's sold. So AI is a pattern generated the pattern and sold. So my take is, no, it's not going to replace human art, but it is for the people who are acknowledging something as art, will be art. This is very similar to NFT discussion, right? So people were asking, oh, would people really pay like millions of dollars for NFTs, which is just like, even people didn't understand that NFT was not the image, right? So like, without knowing that, people paid, which means, and then Ethereum went down like whatever, 80%. So those things lost value by 20x, 30x, 50x, I don't know. But it really doesn't matter. So I think it's just like this, if there's a little bit of like consensus somewhere, there's a value, and that value doesn't have to be right for everyone. So from their perspective, it works, and that's it. So just about that title and article, I don't think it's going to replace, but it's going to coexist. So I can't just say AI art is not art. It is art. So because some people acknowledge it that way. Andre is in a deep pit with some important messaging, so I can fill in more if you need it.
No, you're perfectly fine. I'm perfectly happy with the existence of both, with coexistence.
Yeah.
That might just be a beautiful point to end on, right? Coexistence.
Yeah, that's a good one. Also goes back to your.
You want to take that and finish this out?
Also instant karma, right? So that's the concept of like coexistence and, you know, in the world. So that's a nice way to close the loop.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for hanging in here this long. Thank you, Onur, obviously, for being here and doing this with us. Once again, I'm pretty sure it's gonna take another, 12 to 24 months, and you'll come up with something else, and we'll bug you again. Looking forward to that already. In the meantime, I'm sure we'll get Charlie to do something.
Please do, yeah, make him work.
Make it work.
Yeah.
Other than that, folks, thank you so much. Tentatively February 7th. We should be sorting that out within a week, and the invitation should be coming out within a week or two. Thank you so much, and enjoy the holidays.
All right, much appreciated, everyone. Take care and see you next time, hopefully. Bye.